calculated tables and calculated columns. The difference between switch and if is that they simply do the same thing, but the if allows you to specify just two values to return. One if it is true, one if it is false. The switch allows you to specify more than one condition and the value to return if it is true. So now I want to show you date and time functions. Okay, specifically date functions actually. All right, date functions actually. Now, in doing this, I want to show you a very important aspect of every Power BI model. Whenever you have your data set in Power BI, it's always recommended to create a table known as your calendar table or date table. If you like, have 5-6 tables in your data set. You must have a calendar table, also known as a date table. So what your calendar table simply contains is simply dates. Nothing else, dates. Okay? And it is useful for filtering to your main data set based on date columns. So to do this, we'll start by creating a new table called calendar table. So I'm going to come over to my tab and I will click new table. And I'm going to call this calendar table. Calendar table. That's the name of the table. So calendar table equals to, I now need to give a formula that I will use to calculate the dates. Now I can use two formulas here. Either the calendar or the calendar auto function. So what the calendar function does is that it will create a table with one column. Now that column will have dates from the starting date to the ending date. For instance, if the start date is 1st January 2023 and the end date is 31st January, the calendar table or the calendar function will create a column that has 1st January 2023, 2nd January 2023, 3rd January 2023, 4th January 2023, 5th January 2023, like that till it gets to 31st. So the calendar auto, meaning automatic, does the same thing, but it uses a minimum and maximum dates in your table or in your previous table, meaning I don't have to give it start and end dates. So let's look at an example using the start and end dates, which is calendar function. So I'm going to use my start date to be, let's say, 1st January 2025. Okay? 01. I have to put it in double quotes. Take notes. Your dates has to be in double quotes. 01/01/2025. Who is that? Akintola Timothy. Akintola Timothy. I don't need to. He's not in class. I have to mute him. All right, so I'll close my double quotes, comma, the end date is, let's say, (28th February 2025). 28th February 2025. So I'm going to open my double quotes, 02/28/2025, which is 28th of February. So I am using month day here. And I'll close my brackets and press enter. So forget this time. Everything here, which is not necessarily valid. So just forget this time. But look at the date. What it does. It creates the date from the starting date. 1st January 2025, 2nd January 2025, 3rd January 2025, all the way up until 1st February 2025, like that till 28th February 2025. Okay, so that is for the calendar function. You can give your start date and end date as you want. But let's say I don't remember the start and end date in my data. Let's say the data is quite large. I can use the calendar auto function. Let's do that. I'm going to delete everything here. And I'll change this to the calendar auto function. For the calendar auto function, simply takes open and close brackets. You don't need to put anything in it. Okay? Then press enter. Now, if you look at the dates, what do you have there? You have 1st January 2022. Do you see that? So it quickly noticed that the dates I have are dates in 2022. If I come to my supermarket table, if you look at the date I have there, and you see that the date of 2022. So it will create a whole year based off 2022. So if it sees 2023 there, it will continue from 2023 and create a whole year for 2023. That's the difference between calendar and calendar. Okay? So the calendar auto is, or the calendar is a table function. So you can see I've shown you another table function. Okay? I've shown you two logical functions now, 2 table functions. That is 4 functions in total. Now, the main date functions. How can I get the day name, the month number, the quarter, the year, the week number, the week, and so on and so forth? Those are your date functions. So how do I perform those operations? Now, let's see. I'm going to start by creating a new column. All right? And I'm going to call this column day name, meaning the name of the day. All right? Now, the calendar or the function I'm going to use here, okay, is, okay, for day name, I'm going to use, let me see. You don't pass your power. Waiting pass your power here. I've not said any complex function that you have to do so much. What's the complex function of this? If you don't have the resilience, you can't cope here. But I've not even done anything at all. So the day name, okay? The day name. Now, if you want to get day name of a date in Excel, how do you do it? Can someone help us out? How do you do it in Excel? Column by example works in the Power Query, not in Power BI desktop. Very good. So we have that idea. We use text, then we reference the date column, and then put DDDD in double quotes. Beautiful. So it means we get it. So the difference here is that in Power BI, instead of text, you say format, open brackets. So this is not a date function. Please take note. Okay, it is an information function. Okay, so format. Then I will simply call the dates column. I will say date. Now, when I say date, everything I'm having here are functions, not columns. Do you see that? They are functions. So what I will do is, instead, I will start with my calendar. I will say calendar. And then I will now click my date column from my calendar table. Do you see that? So this is what I need. All these dot date, dot month, you don't need them. Just press comma. Okay? So comma, and I'll say what? I'll say DDDD in double quotes and close my brackets. So you can see the only difference there is the format. Instead of text, you say format. So once you press enter, do you see that? Okay? Now, if you want to create the month name, it means you use the same formula, but this time around, M, right? So, new column, I'll call it month name equals format, open brackets, the date column from my calendar table. So the date column, click it, comma, then in double quotes, M. Close the double quotes, close my brackets, and press enter. Do you see that? January, February, March, April, like that. Okay? So, creating another column, new column. Now, let's say I want to create the month number. Let me use a date function this time around. A month number. I would say month number is equal to, so what's the name of the formula or the function? I will use month. So this is a date function because what it takes to date, simply. So the date function, month, gives me a number between 1 to 12 representing the month. All right. So month, and then I'll type the month name or the date rather. This date. And then I'll put close brackets. That's all. And I'll press that. And that gives me my month number. Do you see that? Then if I want the day of the week, day of week number, like in Excel, where Sunday is 1, Monday is 2, Tuesday is 3, like that. I'll create a new column again. I'll give the name of the column, that name I want to name the column. I'll call it day of week equals to. And the formula I'm going to make use of is weekday. You see that? Weekday. And all I need to put is the date function, which is on my calendar table, the date column. And I'll close my bracket. That's all it needs. And I'll press enter. Do you see that? So Sunday corresponds to 1. Monday corresponds to 2. Up until Saturday corresponds to 7. Then Sunday again corresponds to 1. Do you see that? Then I will create a new column now. Let's see how we can get the quarter. What quarter does it fall in? Is it the first quarter of the year, second quarter of the year, the third quarter of the year, or the fourth quarter of the year? So I'm going to call this column quarter equals to, and the formula I'm going to use simply is what? Quarter. Okay, and then I'll put my date column. And I'll close my brackets. And I'll press enter. So this gives me the quarter in just numbers. 1, 2, 3, and then finally 4. So quarter 1, 4. But I want to include Q in it. I want Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Unlike in Power Query, where you can do column from examples. Here, you can't do column from examples. So you need to modify your formula. So what I will do is I will come to my formula, and before you generate the number for the quarter, first do what? First type the letter Q in double quotes. Letter Q. Okay? And then I will use my and symbol. So it will start with the letter Q, then attach it to the respective quarter. So I can now have Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Do you see that? So Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Do you see that? So finally, let's create. So we've seen months, we've seen quarter. Let's look at year, another date function. New column. Let's call this year equal. So the year equals what? The year equals, the function we're going to use is year. And we'll put the date column. Now close my brackets. I press enter. And you can see it gives me the year. So that is on date functions. Okay? Now, whenever you create a calendar table, you need to register that table as a date table. And how do you do this? You simply come to your table tools at the top here. Then you have table tools. Because this is my calendar table, it contains just dates. I'm going to mark it as a date table. So I will click here, mark as date table, mark as date table. And it will ask me for the column to select. And I will select these dates. It says validated successfully. And I will say what? Okay. Beautiful. So in Power BI, it recognizes this as a date table. All right. It helps me in my time intelligence functions. All right. So we've seen date and time functions, we've seen logical functions, we've seen table functions, we've seen information functions. Mathematical functions are not really necessary. Okay, yes, some average, we'll see those ones as well. Then time intelligence functions, which is like the beauty of it all. Okay, so I think with this, I've properly drilled you on calculated columns and calculated tables. All right. So the last one we want to look at is measure. 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 Okay. The last one we want to look at is measure. So for measure, how do we go about it? we still use paste values to remove formula? No. You cannot copy any formula. You cannot copy from any cell here. Okay. So, how do we go about measures? Let's go into our report view now. Oh, sorry. Before we do that, let me show you a bit of. Should I do that? Okay, no, let's keep that for today. I'll show you in the next class. Now, for measure, as I said, you can see the calculated columns, calculated tables that we've been creating. They appear at once. We see it. We see the values immediately. Now, let's look at measures. All right. For measures, we said they are stored as source code in our model. So we're simply storing the formula to be used when we need it. So to create a measure, you can simply click new measure up here, or right click on the table you want to create the measure. So let's say on supermarket table, I want to create a measure that will calculate my sum of sales. Now look at something. Your sum of sales can be created without using measure. And it can also be created using measure. Okay? So let's say I want to use measure. I've already shown you how to do that without using measure. So let's say I want to use measure. I will right click that table and I will say new measure. Click on it. So the same way your columns, calculated columns have been doing, or calculated tables as well, you can also do for measures. You can also do for measures. Okay? So I will start with the name of the measure. What name do I want to give the measure? Let's say I call it sum of sales. Or I can call it total sales. Let's say total sales. So the total sales will be gotten by what? By adding up what? Which column? Who is going to help us? How do you get the total sales? Very good. Very good. Okay? Very good. So we're going to calculate it by adding up the sales column. Beautiful. Okay? That is the idea. We are getting it by adding up the sales column. All right? So I will say sum, which is the name of the function I'm going to use, my mathematical function or aggregation function. Let's say aggregation function. Okay? So sum is the name of the function I'm going to use. Open brackets. Now the column name, you can see it asks for column. It says add all the numbers in a column. So which column do I want to add all the numbers? You already said is the sales column, isn't it? So I will say sales. Now the sales column from which table? From my supermarket table. So this is the column. Supermarket table, sales. I will click on that column and I will close my bracket. Then I press enter. So you see that immediately I press enter, what happened? It was as if there was no change, nothing really happened. But on my data pane here, I have something called total sales. Isn't it? Okay, let's go to our data view, our table view. On our supermarket table, I don't have any column called total sales. Do I? No, because it is a measure I created. Do you see that? So the measure does not appear at once. But now, if I want to use the measure, I will use it on my report view. Let's say I want to see what's the total sales. I will click card visual or any other visual that I want to use it. I will now drag total sales to the fields. And you see automatically it gives me the total sales. This is the measure. Is there really any difference between using measure and simply dragging the sales column to calculate total sales? Let's see. I'm going to click outside and I'll click a new card visual. Now, the normal way I taught you to storm a column or to calculate total sum of sales is drag the sales column to fields. It will automatically take the sum. Now, you see that for this visual, I'm using the sales column. It's taking the sum of sales. But for this first visual, I'm using the measure to generate the total sales. So for the second one, I did not have to use any formula, isn't it? And one thing is that if you come to the field where you dropped it on, if you click on this arrow here, you can see you can change it from sum to average. If I change it to average, it changes automatically. I can change it back to sum. But for measure, it makes use of the formula you gave to it initially. Nothing more, nothing less. So if I come here and I click on this arrow, we see that I cannot change it to average. So if I want a new measure for average sales, I will have to type the formula out and call it average sales, and then use the average formula. Do you see that? Do you see that? Okay. Now, this sum of sales is a filter context function, meaning it calculates it in a whole and allows you to filter by a category. If I use this same function to create a new column called total sales, it will give me a wrong input. Look at something. If I say new column, if I create a new column, I say new column. This is a wrong approach. Oh, I'm showing you something. Okay? A wrong approach. And I say total, let's say I call this column the sum of sales. And then I now use that function, sum the sales column on the supermarket table. And I close my brackets and press enter. You will see that it will give me the same value over and over again. Okay? So this function, sum, is a filter context function. It is not a row context. What a row context will do is that it will calculate based on each row. What is the total sales for this row? It will give you. But because it is a filter context, it will just calculate the whole and give it to you, bam, in all the cells in that column. So this is a wrong approach. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it, right click, and I say delete from model. Yes. Okay. But if I come back to my report view, because it is a filter context, okay, if I change this card visual to table visual, it gives me the total as 91, just once, isn't it? If I now say, okay, drag the, let's say, let's say we drag the sales category column. Okay, drag it, sales category, where is it? And I drop it here as well. You will see that it immediately gives me the total sales for high-end sales and the total sales for low-end sales, meaning it is filtering these sales by the sales category column. It did not do it when I created column using that formula. So it is a filter context function. Okay, but that might be, I think it's actually part of advanced Power BI. Okay, I don't need to go that deep. All right, but I just needed to mention it. So that if you get it outside, you go and filter context, you just like, oh, I think Mr. Malik has talked about this before, even though you probably do not really grab it, but you've heard it. Okay, so I think this is what we're going to stop for today. So in the next class, we're picking up from measures as well. All right, and in measures, we're going to be looking at what? So we've seen table functions, mathematical or aggregation function, information functions, logical function, date and time. So the beauty of it all that I said is the logic time intelligence function. All right, so we're going to look at the time intelligence function. And the time intelligence function, prepare your mind, because we will now begin to compare across different dates the sales for this month against the sales for the previous month. What is the percentage change? The sales for this year against the sales for the previous year. What is the percentage change? What is the total sales we have gotten from year to the current date? What is the total sales we have gotten for time intelligence function? So we're going to be looking at that in the next class. Okay, I think today is this is the fifth class, no, fourth class on Power BI, isn't it? Yes, fourth class on Power BI. Okay, so after now, all right, so in the fifth class, we're going to look at using the time intelligence functions to create wonderful visuals. Okay, and that will usher us into our special Power BI tutor-led projects. Okay, and then finally the Power BI capstone project that will be given to you. All right, so also prepare your mind. Okay, I'm going to be showing us how to get your first virtual project. Okay, that will give you something like a virtual internship project rather. Okay, and that will give you a certificate if you are able to complete it. Okay, so yes, you can also practice with data from other sources. Yes, definitely. All right, for example, climate data. Yes, you can. Not only supermarkets or sales data you can use in Power Visual. All right, you can use any kind of data really. All right, when is DAX applicable in the industry? So as the name implies, data analysis expression. So it is applicable when you want to analyze data. All right, a web or Bielsa. I hope that's taken. Okay, so I hope that's taken. So so we're going to be stopping for tonight. So let me share us the attendance link.